What's going on YouTube? Welcome to episode 18 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And today we got kind of a long one. We got about a 38-minute video, but my goal is by the end of today's episode, we're going to be closing in the majority of this upper hull of the lower, or the upper side of the lower hull. We won't be able to get to the middle and the lower side, but we're going to be completely filling in, or almost all of the back of it. So without further ado, let's jump into it because we got kind of a long one today. Now you can see here that I added this blue line, builder line going along the curve here, as I wanted to see how much I wanted to bring that up, which doesn't necessarily look bad. You can see I actually added 2 rows here, but we're actually going to be getting rid of that blue row and placing that with a half slab. Before we do that, we're going to go 1 row beneath it, and we're going to do a layer of a full block going all the way around the lip on the top side here. You see I'm going with the cut, so as long as you make sure that you're following this same rule right now, you won't be able to make a mistake because we're really just going with the outline that we've already pre-established along the sides of the lower hull. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons: to give the ship a little bit more shape, and to help make it look a little bit more three-dimensional than it currently is. And I think that's really going to help it, and not being so flat on the sides, because that was something that was kind of holding me up a little bit. Is I really wanted to maintain that curve that you can clearly see, like when you look at the Enterprise D from the front, the sides, really any angle really has kind of like a set curve to it, the way that it slopes in and all like kind of slopes down in the back, which we have our outline right there, which kind of encapsulates how that's going to go. Now we've done the top side, we're going to go in, and I think we're going to be doing the underside here. That's looking pretty good. Trying to get a gauge right now for the thickness of it. Now, before I go on to the next step, what we did on this right side, adding this layer, we're going to do the same thing on the left side, and then we're also going to add a layer. How I started on the left underside, we're going to do that going all the way around to the back end, and then do the same thing on the left side. Or actually, I take that back. So just to clarify, this row was the row that we just added. So we're going to be swapping that out with the half slabs. I don't know why I thought it was going to be one up, but we're doing it right on this row. This is essentially the row that we just added. You're going to see right here, there's going to be a little bit of a gap. Don't worry about that. We're going to address that. So I want to make a point to do this row of half slabs going all the way around, both the left side and the right side. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cut down the intensity of the cut and making it just a little bit thinner right there. So we're going to do that going all the way around. We're going to hold off on adding that row on the underside. You say I haven't done that yet, so hold off on that just for now. Now we're going to come back and we're going to do a row of full slabs going directly behind the half slabs. And before we do a full row, we're actually going to bring our hull line right up to the next line cut. You see, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here. I have to tone it back or tap on the brakes just a little bit. Now, my main reason for doing this is I just kind of determined that I didn't want it to start cutting down too soon, so I'm trying to stretch this out just a little bit more. So that's why we're just going to be kind of extending this row to the next cut line, and we can get away with that. Not all the cut lines have to match up. It's not something that I necessarily want to stay. It's not necessarily something that I like to do all the time. It's really something I only do when I feel that I absolutely have to. Those of you that watch my YouTube channel a lot know that I'm all about my patterns and making sure that everything lines up. But sometimes you can get away with that as long as it's going to make it look good. And I think in this case, it's definitely going to. We're going to zoom out and take a look at that. That looks pretty good. Then we're going to do the same thing on the left side. Just repeat that same process, and you'll be caught up what we're going to do. So if you need to pause the video, go for it, and then we're just going to pick right up and go into the next step. So now we're going to cut in one and get ready to add our next row. See, this is one of the reasons why we spent so much time working on the front frame of the ship, because the rest of this isn't really going to be so hard. The hardest part that we've had to do really is the front end of the ship, and now that we've gotten all that pretty much established, getting most of the back end here is kind of going to be smooth sailing at this point. It's really not going to be super difficult. We've already gotten past the hardest part, at least on building out the shell. You see there is going to be one gap right there, and you saw what I did, I just brought it over. We'll address that later on. If it kind of cuts in a little bit, that's not really going to be that big of a deal right there, because you see right here, it kind of just blends in with the side. So that's why I was saying I didn't necessarily want a huge flat side right here, but we're going to have a little bit of that. We're not really going to be able to do too much about that. You see we still have a little bit of the gap right there from when we switched to the half slabs, but we'll address that right along there. So let's go ahead and get right back into it. We're going to do the same thing that we're doing here on the left side. All right, we're almost to the top. That's looking pretty good so far. Got a couple more rows to do, and then we'll be caught up with everything that we've done on the left side and the right side. So far, so good. Just have to add one block right there. Okay. Now we're going to come up to the next cut line. You see that's kind of where our template is. So we can either go up to this cut line or we might skip over to the next one. We're kind of going to see how that goes. I think that's actually what we might end up doing here. We'll see. So you can see the second block, we're bringing this all the way down to the second cuts because we want one cut and then the second one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring that all the way down to the second cut. So there's one in the middle. So we're going to pass the first one and go right down the second one. Like I said, we can get away with that. Doesn't always have to match up, but I think where you can, try to keep it matching. But in this case, we're trying to stretch out the length of the hull and stop the progression that it cuts down. Because every time we cut, it's going to start progressing down a lot. So we really kind of want to stretch that out where we need to. And this row and the previous one, that was kind of really vital because that's getting us a little bit towards more the back end of the ship. But we're not going to be doing that too much more, exaggerating how far we're going to be bringing it back. But I think that this will look just fine because everything that you're seeing me doing now, we're keeping this. We're not making any changes to it. And this is going to get us to right where we were in the teaser trailer, which is awesome. And really starting to get excited because at this point, we're getting that much closer to having the outside of this thing finished. and working on the inside. And the inside, it's going to be a long process to get through that. I'm currently working on the inside right now, and I just kind of got done working on the template of where the mall is going to go in the Enterprise D, because I've gotten the majority of my hallways mapped out, and now I'm up in the saucer section and working my way out. So there was a couple of things I had to build in there in order to get it right. And that was one of the things I found from the concept art, that the mall was kind of centered in the center of the saucer, which is going to be pretty cool. That a lot of people probably don't know this, that the Enterprise D did in fact have a mall. Um, and that's taken a lot of time to get that right. And there's been a lot of cool things that this ship has, because it's funny, I was talking to my girlfriend about this, that the Enterprise D is essentially um, a city. When you think about it, it's got 1,000 families on board, so there's a lot of people. So anyway, I do want to talk a little bit more about what we got going on here. The steps that we complete on the right side, we're going to do the same thing on the left side. So I want to make sure that you do that, so this way you're caught up with everything that we're doing. And now we're going to be deleting this row of blocks that's directly behind where that gap was for the half slabs. And we're just going to bring that all the way down so it's flat. I told you guys just a little while ago that we're going to be addressing that, and we're doing that right now. All right, so let's go over the right side. Now we're going to repeat the same process just in case you missed it. So this middle part right here where it arches up, we're just going to get rid of that. The last 3 rows were taken off. And now we're just going to fill all this in with full blocks. Because Enterprise D on the sides of it does kind of have a little bit of a lip, but it's not that big. So we might come back to that, mess with that a little bit more. But right now that doesn't look too bad. That's a good place to be in. And now we're going to transition and go to the next cut line. You can see I'm kind of shaping up how that's going to go. See where that's going to arch up at. I'm thinking, looking right at that, let's actually go back just so you can see that. You can see how I'm lining this up, where it looks like that's right about there where I had that cut going there. That should be pretty good. And I'm just eyeing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Um, and if we need to make some changes as we go, we'll make changes. You can see I'm just going up to the next cut line. I'm not skipping one on this row. Oh, one extra. Yeah, because really right now, everything that we're doing, since I've never built a Galaxy class ship before, this is all these patterns I'm doing now, they're new. So a lot of this I'm eyeing, I'm seeing how it works, and you can see that we're making small changes as we go. And that's really the best thing that you can do when you're building a ship from scratch like this. Of course, using your reference material, in this case, we're using 3D model of the Enterprise D and also pictures, but mostly the 3D model, because I feel like I was able to get so much more out of that, because then I can spin it around and look at it from different angles, which is so much more helpful than as opposed to looking at a picture. I think the only thing that would be better than a 3D model would be is if you had a physical model of the Enterprise D, we can actually hold it and look at it from different angles. But that's really all we're doing right now. We're just trying to look at those different angles on the ship and the lower hull, and trying to build that out in a 3-dimensional shape that really captures how the Enterprise D looks. And I wish that there was another way I can explain it other than looking at it, eyeing it, and trying to build it in the shape that it looks like. But that's really what it is. And sometimes there's going to be some trial and error periods, or maybe you throw something down and it doesn't look right. But sometimes you just have to build something out to see how it looks in order to make changes to it. But it's something I've learned with building lower hulls on ships. A lot of times it's more where you start that's more important than when you Well, I take that back. It's definitely, having your wireframe is very important. And then obviously the front outline of the ship, because that's going to dictate the shape that the rest of the ship is going to go. Um, those parts are so important when you're building this out. So you can see that I extended out the hull to our next cut line. I'm doing that on both the left side and the right side. You may need to pause the video because now we're adding another layer. So once you catch up, now we're going to be going over to the next cut, and we're going one in. But again, we're staying with our template, with our cut lines. We're not skipping any rows at this point. So as long as you stay with the cut when we're adding or going inward on the sides here and then bring it up to the next cut line, you're in good shape. You can't make a mistake as long as you follow this rule. And if you're noticing that something's not matching up, then that means you went past the cut line somewhere, either on your transition point going in or the back side here on our outlines. You see I'm using these cuts on the side of the ship as my reference on how far to bring this back. And these are just rules that I've adopted over a period of time. Um, and in all honesty, they really help me out because it saves me from making a lot of mistakes. And it's one of the reasons why I really like building ships this way. And not only that, it's just my opinion now. I think that personally, I think that they look better. I think that when you're building a ship off of a pattern, um, it looks a heck of a lot better than when you just have a bunch of random blocks hodgepodge together that when you look at it from a distance, it kind of looks like what the Enterprise should look like. I'm not a fan of that. And I think that these patterns, that's the way to go about it. And that's how we're going to do this whole build, just like every other build that I do on Minecraft. I think the one and only build that I didn't do that for was the Borg cube, but that was kind of the point with the Borg cube, was having a ton of randomness. So I will say that that was the one time I made an exception with that rule. Hey, you can see here how that's looking. I mean, those lines, that's looking pretty good. That doesn't look bad. That doesn't look bad at all. And it's not looking like that much right now, but when we get this whole back end filled in, it's gonna look pretty awesome. And see how we already have our predetermined cuts here. We can get a gauge now for how far, how long this is going to go back. And it's actually going to work out pretty good. This is going to actually go all the way almost to the back completely without us really having to make any alterations to it, which is pretty awesome. I was actually very surprised with how this back end turned out, because usually when I'm building a back end like lower hull like this from scratch, there's usually one or two changes that we have to make. But it's because we took so much time working on the outline of the ship that this paid off the way that it did. And I honestly, I could not be happier with how Enterprise D has come out. There's like one or two little tiny things that I'm not like 100% happy with, like with the neck specifically and the deflector dish. But at this point, I'm being my own worst critic with that. But everything else, I'm 100% happy with. I honestly, I probably could not have done better. But I think those are two maybe areas that I could possibly improve on. I don't know. But at the same time, I haven't seen anybody else do a better job. So um, that's just kind of my opinion on it. But at the same time, there's 1,001 ways to build these ships out. What I'm doing right now, this is nothing set in stone. This is just my own opinions on shipbuilding. And at the end of the day, you could either, use the information I'm giving you as advice, or try to do it exactly, or use it as a loose reference, or maybe just kind of, get a vague idea and then do your own thing. You're definitely more than welcome to. And, that's something that I've done myself. But at the same time, I've had so many people ask me in the past, what are the steps that you've done to build these ships? And I'm really making a point to try to show everything that I do and talk about everything that I think about when I'm building these ships, because I feel that it is helpful when you have that state of mind when you're building these things, because they definitely come into play, at least for me anyway. I'm a very visual person. I get that from being an artist. And sometimes when you have that front template, like in this case, what we did with the wireframe on the sides and then the front, that can really help you in envisioning on where it's going to go. And then also, it kind of, you're setting these basically stop signs in places on knowing where to stop and where to not go past. And that's kind of what we've been doing over the last couple of episodes. And as you can see, it's really, really working out. And what can I say? I'm really excited on how this thing is shaping up. We got a long way to go, though. We got a lot of build to do. Um, I don't know how many episodes this is going to go, but put it this way, on my recording sessions, I'm already up to 230 recording sessions. But that's not to say that all those, every single recording session is 30 minutes or an hour. Some of those, they might be that long. Other ones might be 5 minutes. Other ones might be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It really depends. It depends on what I was feeling in that moment and on if I was able to get a lot done. And in some cases, I'll usually end up doing just a really quick clip because I'll just be thinking about one little change and I want to make a point to have that included in my recordings. So I'm not sure how many episodes we're going to go out, but I think we might end up having the most episode count for this build as opposed to everything else I've done in the past. Even with my efforts on trying to cut down on time on how many episodes it's going to go out to because I've really only I've gotten a lot done on the interior, but at the same time, I feel like I really only have just begun on it, and there's still a lot of work to do on the outside too, on the detailing and whatnot. And I'm not going to rush this one. I think in some cases, like with the Disco Era Enterprise, there was like one or two rooms I didn't show, and I just kind of called it a day when we got towards the end. But the outside of it was done, and the inside. Maybe more so with the Cerritos. There was some extra room space that I had to work with on the Cerritos. I just, kind of called it done. But I really think that the Enterprise D, this is going to be something that I put so much work into it that I don't really want to walk away from it until it's done. So, however many episodes this goes out to, that's kind of what it's going to end up being, and we'll just kind of go from there. You can see I'm keeping with my rule now that we're adding in this extra layer. I'm going with the cut line that's been established on the side of the ship for the lower hull. We're not building anything else out past the middle right here. We're kind of stopping right at that line there. We repeat the same process now on the left side. Sometimes I'll do both sides live. Sometimes I'll just do one. Um, I made the point to only do one side and tell you guys to do it on the other side, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't always remember that off the top of my head when I'm building this out. You can see I started that out, and now we're just gonna continue on. We're gonna be building right where we left off. I don't remember why I'd stopped the video there, but there was probably something I had to do. But yeah, sometimes you're gonna see me go back and forth, and I'll do both sides. Sometimes when we're doing something so repetitive like this, I'll just do one side and tell you to do the other one. Um, but we're literally mimicking the same thing that we did on the right side because I'm going by that rule. If I do one thing on one side, I want to do that on the other side also. We're in good shape so far. We're getting slowly towards the back end of the ship. Like I said, with that gap that we have in the middle between the sides of the lower hull and the neck, we won't be getting to that today, and we won't be completing the underside of the lower hull today, but we're going to get the majority of the sides done, if not all of it. From what I remember when I edited this video this morning, I'm pretty sure like we got the sides that we're building, those are going to be 100% complete by the time we're done today. But it's just taking a little bit of time to render that out, and that's largely because of the scale of this ship. And this was something I talked about on why it's taken me so long to start this tutorial, because it took a really long time to build this ship. I was working on it for 3 months before I actually started the tutorial. Because I think we started this towards the end of May, I think it was. I was working on this ship in the beginning of January, or the end of January, beginning of February. So I've been working on it a long time. Um, Now that I've started the tutorial, I have taken small breaks in between here and there, and that's something I definitely recommend too. Is you don't want to get yourself burnt out because then you start making mistakes, and maybe you're not building something, you're just not feeling it, and if you're like me, that stuff's going to carry over in your work. So it's really important to take small breaks, especially when you're building something this scale. You think about it like this, Enterprise D, she's not going anywhere. She's just going to sit there. So you might as well take your time, enjoy what you're doing, and have some fun with it. And that's what I've been trying to do. And I got to be honest, I really, when I first started this YouTube channel, well, I take that back. When I first started doing tutorials for the YouTube channel, I really thought that I wasn't sure how far this was going to go because I had I made the decision I'm going to do a tutorial of the Disco Era Enterprise, and let's just see what happens. And I got such positive reviews with that. I was like, all right, let's do the next one, and then the next one, and we're before you know it, we're here. I've already done 4 or 5 different tutorials, and I'm surprisingly not burnt out. And that's because I've taken small breaks in between these builds where I've recorded up enough material where I can take small breaks, but at the same time, I know when to get back on so I don't catch up with myself. And that's really the main point that what I'm doing here, that I'm trying to get on enough to work on the Enterprise D and build out the interior and work on the outside to the point that I don't catch up with myself. So that hopefully by the time I'm done with the interior, we'll still definitely be going on the tutorial itself. Well, I know that we will be because there's a long way to go. So you can see here now we're just going in again with the cut. We went in one on this front side here. We went in and we're going with the cut line on the sides using basically our loose template. And if you're not sure how this is going to look, go back and watch my teaser for the Enterprise D, the full teaser trailer, because everything that we're doing now, we're going to keep it. Like I said, I was just absolutely shocked with how well this was turning out, because it really, we get all the way down to the back end here, and it just kind of blends in kind of perfect. It looks really, really good. We're starting to wind down a little bit. We still have about 13 minutes left in the episode, but plenty of time to do what we need to do today. So again, now we're going in one with a cut, and from this part here, and then on the sides, we're going up to the next cut line. As long as we're following that, no mistakes can be made. And it's funny too, because a lot of the stuff that you guys see me doing now, this is stuff that I did not always used to do. The original 2009 Enterprise was one of the first videos I actually ever posted on YouTube. Everything that you see me doing now, I did not do for that build. I cannot even begin to tell you the trial and error process it took me just to get to that point. And then when I refitted it, because a lot of people might not know this, but the Star Trek Beyond retrofit of the Enterprise A is actually legit a refit of the 2009 Enterprise. Um, it took me a really long time to do that, and that's between doing those 2 builds and then building the Vengeance. I've learned this process. Everything that I've been going over through this entire tutorial, I learned how to do this stuff, and I really wish I had known it sooner, because if I knew this stuff ahead of time, I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have, when it came time to do the Star Trek Beyond Enterprise A, the retrofit, probably would have built it from scratch. I would have saved myself a little bit of time, because the amount of work that I ended up having to do was 2 things. I was not only upgrading the look of the ship, but I was also fixing 1,000,001 mistakes that I had previously made. And that's one of the reasons why, if you go on and look at the time frame in which they came out, it was a very long time, is because I was through trial and error learning how to correct those mistakes and make it look better. And I'm pretty certain at this point, if I ever actually went back and rebuilt that ship, I'd probably end up doing a better job with it this time, because now that I've adopted all these different um, rules that I've set for myself, it's allowed me to build these ships in a much better way, I think. Now you can see here, I'm getting kind of nervous. So what I'm doing now is I'm going off the lip of the right side of the hull that we've added, and I'm eyeing, looking, seeing how many blocks are on this outline here. I'm just going row to row, and I'm doing this because I want to see where I'm going to end up at. When you're doing ships of your own, maybe not necessarily Enterprise D or other ships, you can try this too, because it'll give you a great idea of where you're going, basically. We could have done this to begin with, but um, see, you'd see kind of where that's going to end up at. I have just enough room, tiny, tiny lip back here, but that's not really a big deal. It's going to look great. kind of doing it opposite this time, starting from the top and working my way down. Um, which you can definitely do. If you don't feel confident enough to do that, keep doing what we were doing before. This is the other thing too. Like I've been saying, everything that I'm doing now, some of these things, if you have your own way of doing it, feel free to do it. These are just suggestions on things that I've learned over building these ships over the past eight. I don't know how at this point. I don't remember how many years I've been doing this. It feels like I've been building these ships for almost about 10 years now, between all the ships that I've built, doing them off and on. And these are all the steps that I've learned. Watching this tutorial, you're going to hopefully acquire all of these skills yourself, and it'll make shipbuilding a heck of a lot easier for yourself. So we're in pretty good shape. We're going to do the same thing we did on the right side on the left. And again, I'm going to the cut, and I'm going in, based off our cut line going up the side here. So far, so good. Got a couple more rows to do, and then we'll be on to the next one. Haven't necessarily had too many people asking questions on the build lately, which I think has been good. Hopefully, that's because I've been explaining this in a way that nobody's been making any mistakes. I know that in episode 1, I made a tiny, tiny mistake on the dimensions of the saucer, but um, I made sure to include that in the comments section and also on the description of the ship. But other than that, it's pretty much been smooth sailing on the Enterprise D, which I'm actually been pretty happy with. Because hopefully I've been getting better at doing these tutorials, because this was one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily want to jump into it before, is because I really had never done these before, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to explain these in a way to where not only would it make sense for people, but if it would be any good. And so far, I've had some really positive feedback from everybody. So I just want to thank everybody that enjoys watching these videos. That definitely means a lot. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I've had a blast building these ships on here, and I've actually never. This is the most I've built in Minecraft at this point. Because before, I used to get on here kind of when I had the itch to build something, and now it's kind of approaching a point where I'm just thinking about, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do, and making a point to get on and building it. So I mean, it's definitely been a lot of fun doing this. And speaking of the next build, this is something we can start thinking about. What are we going to do next? I've I've had a few people comment on things that they'd like to see. I think at this point, Voyager is probably the #1 request I've been getting, um, other than what the after the Enterprise D, because even going back to right before I built the Cerritos, I had a few people asking for that ship, but the Cerritos kind of ended up getting a little bit more requests in it. But still, steady, I've been getting people asking me. And also, this is something else too. If you comment something, I remember this stuff, and I remember the comments that people make. And I also save them. So if I don't respond to your comment on a request that you're making, that's because I'm saving it, because it shows up on my YouTube channel and I can see what people are asking for. And I use this stuff when I'm making a decision on what my next build is going to be. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I want to build something that I'm going to enjoy building, and something that people are going to enjoy seeing and that they want to build too. And I've done a pretty good job with that so far, picking ships that people want to see, at the same time the ships that I want to build also. It's kind of worked out really nice that way. And Voyager, I think, would be a lot of fun. I don't know for sure if Voyager is going to happen 100%. I don't want to say that until I start it, because you never know. I might get a ton of people that ask for something else, or I might end up getting a ton more people that ask for Voyager, and it's like, okay, this is what everybody wants next. But with that being said, let me know what ships you want to see me build on Minecraft. Is it Voyager? Is there a different ship that you want to see? let me know in the comments section. I definitely love to hear from you. Even if it's just to drop in and say hey, or if you have a question regarding this build or unrelated question to this build or just something else, let me know in the comments section. Definitely love to hear from you. But as you can see here, we are slowly but surely at a crawl getting towards the back end of the ship, but it's getting kind of exciting because we are almost done and really starting to see the fruits of our labor that we've spent so much time working on the outline of this hull that we can actually start filling it in. And to me, this is something that is one of the most rewarding parts on Minecraft, is that you spent all this time planning it out. Now you actually get to see what it looks like. And to me, when you're building Minecraft on Minecraft, there's no greater feeling than that, because you get to sit back and take a look at what you did, and you know that you what you have done is exactly what you wanted, and it came out the way that you wanted. And most importantly, it looks like what you're building. Um, I think so far we're in pretty good shape. At the end of the day, it's not perfect, but we're dealing with blocks here, so it's never going to be 100% perfect. We're going to consider it pixel art. But all things considered, she's looking pretty awesome. All right. I got a little bit ahead of myself there. Even though we are going to need that block there, I'm going to continue on with this row, going up until we meet our middle cut. All right, so far so good. Matched up on the left side and the right side. At this point, I'm working from the outside, or the middle, out to the outside. You always want to make sure if you're adding extra build blocks, you're deleting the access, because that's also very important too, because when you start working on your interior, you don't want just random blocks sitting there, because it can potentially mess up your build. Okay, so that's looking nice and clean. Definitely liking how that's coming out so far. We're going to have to figure out this middle part here, but that's not going to be too bad because we've already got the template already established. This is going to be a matter of making it work with the neck that we already have. And then also the backbone of the lower hull that feeds from the tail end of the ship up to the neck itself. See, I'm just going with my cut lines here. As long as we do this, no mistakes can happen, in good shape. What ultimately is going to end up happening here is that some of these blocks going inward are going to be flat, and that's okay. We're just going to have to deal with that. But at this point, I'm just kind of racking my brain thinking, okay, is that what I necessarily want to do? Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the left side here. We skipped the very last block. I need to get rid of those two right there. Yeah, the block that would actually blend in, we're going to skip that for right now. And we're pretty sure we're going to do the same thing on this row also. So we got one more to do. And let's do the same thing on the left side, or the right side, I mean. Okay. Actually, only got one more row to go. So I have a tiny, tiny gap in the back here. Don't worry about that. We'll address that. Go. One more row to complete, and we're going to call this done for today. And just like that, as promised, finishing up the sides of the lower hull. Still have to do the backbone area here and the underside, but she's looking really good. This curve here, I mean, the way this is going so far, I really could not be happier with it. We have spent a lot of time trying to build this out, and what can I say? It's finally paid off so far. Most important thing, does it look like the Enterprise D? And I think it definitely does. Has that exact curve like the Enterprise D should have on the sides. But I think that's going to wrap us up today. Got a lot done. I'm sure I've probably gone on to 40 minutes just with all the talking and times I've paused the episode. But like I said, today was going to be a long one, but that's definitely going to wrap us up. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so as get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, for right now, my schedule is going to be changing. As you probably noticed, I'm not having Starship Evo builds dropping every Monday, and that's because I'm trying to figure out what build I'm going to be doing next. Um, but you can always catch my Minecraft builds dropping Tuesdays through Thursdays. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode, and I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.